Hi, good morning, Wahid, or good evening, where you are in Indonesia. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having us, Norman.
No, it's great to have you. It's great to see you again. You look fantastic. So thank you so much. Listen, why don't we just jump right into the interview? You have a phenomenal job leading the Indonesia Infrastructure Guarantee Fund. Can you just tell us a little bit about what it is and why it's such an important and creative way to address the infrastructure investment opportunities in Indonesia?
Yes, thank you again. The Indonesian Infrastructure Guarantee Fund is actually an entity. We call it a strategic mission vehicle set up under the Ministry of Finance. So we are 100% owned by the government under the supervisions of the Ministry of Finance. And we have the mandate to support the development of infrastructure in Indonesia by way of three mandates. The first one is by providing the sovereign guarantee or government guarantee for public-private partnership. And the second one is also to provide credit guarantee for direct lending scheme from multilateral agencies to the local SOE. And the last one is actually to deliver what's so-called the project development facility to help the contracting agency in executing the project preparation.
Oh, fantastic. You know, that's something that we see that's missing all over the world. Feasibility studies, feasibility study funds, and just a quick way to prepare a project pipeline. So that sounds like you have that well under control. That's fantastic. Just to get to the business part of this, because that's what's really interesting, I think, for the people watching. What are 2 or 3 of your current priority projects? And do these projects, are you looking for international investment? Is this local investment? But just to get a sense of your priorities at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021.
Yeah, I think considering the current situations, our first priority is to develop the what's so-called the basic infrastructure. This pertains to areas such as the water, provision of clean water, and also the health, so provision of hospital. The second area is in the area of the connectivity. How can we support the development of the national road, toll road, airports, and ports? And lastly, the area pertaining to the urban facility. So low-cost housing development, waste treatment, and urban transport. I think more or less this is the 3 area focus that we are currently working on, Norm.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you a question. I just finished a Forbes piece on 5G. You have a tremendous technology background. Is 5G a priority for Indonesia as well right now? And is it a priority for the Guarantee Fund?
Not at the moment. I think in our side, we are actually supporting the development of fiber optic access to the remote areas. So I think I was in the US back around 95, 96, actually working in the IT sector there. At the time, you recall, you know, the Al Gore is promoting what's so-called the National Information Infrastructure. So similarly, also we have what we call now is Palapa Ring project. So it's basically a network of fiber optic connecting these remote islands and areas in the western part, central and eastern part of Indonesia.
That's fantastic, you know, because one of the things we found with COVID is that the people who aren't connected, they lack access to medicine, they lack access to jobs, they lack access to education. So that's fantastic. We see that as it's almost a basic human right all over the world now, is good access to broadband.
Yes, you're right. I think actually most of the work now, even the schooling is done over the internet these days. So having access to a proper broadband is very important.
It's amazing how the world's changed. One of the things that really captures the world's imagination in terms of Indonesia is your decision to create a new capital city. Can you just tell us a little bit about where you are? I mean, I suppose this is the largest infrastructure project in the world. It's a really amazing challenge, but an amazing opportunity. So I'd love to hear a little bit, and I think the people listening would love to hear a little bit about where you are.
Yes, I think this is a what I call it exciting vision set up by our leadership. But of course, at this moment, because of these pandemic situations, the plan is temporarily on hold. Right. I think we hear more about this, starting from next year. But I think the idea is actually go beyond the capital city. As maybe you're aware of, we have also experienced a major trend in urbanization. So people are moving actually from the countryside, from the villages to the cities. I think similarly for Indonesia. And as you know that our big cities are not very well planned or designed as a major metropolitan. It's just, naturally developed from some of the old ancient cities to become one of these big cities right now, like the Jakarta area, Surabaya, and Medan.
Right.
It was, an old traditional city in the past that developed into a modern city right now. So I think the vision to have a properly planned city, I think is very good. So we can start from scratch, preparing what's an ideal place to be developed with proper planning, proper infrastructure and facility. I think that we will really attract the a lot of interest, talents, investment from everywhere. I think that's what we are trying to do. Maybe not only one location, but also develop other metropolitan areas as well.
That's fantastic. And I noticed at the beginning of your answer to the last question, your initial focus is on water and on healthcare as well. And that's obviously really important. Tell us a little bit about where you are in terms of COVID. And I'm just trying to get a sense, we've talked about that a little bit, but has that changed your thinking in terms of priorities?
Yes, I think in the beginning, we expect there will be some slowing down in the development of infrastructure due to the reallocations and the refocusing of budget to address the health situations. But I think interestingly, as we proceed, there is still a strong commitment to infrastructure development. Of course, partially because infrastructure also relates to the health issues. Provision of clean water, of course, very, very relevant. Because as you know, we are all now are encouraged to wash our hands regularly. And to maintain the health, it's important to have a clean water. A hospital is another example. But also areas like the connectivity and logistic are very important. Because even if you are staying at home, you still need to have your goods delivered to your home, right? I think like what we are now experiencing in Indonesia, we stay home, but we still have our shopping and food, groceries done online. So it still needs a good connectivity and logistical infrastructure. So everybody realized that it's still important, and I think this, we are pleasantly surprised that the progress of the project are, I think, quite reasonably well progressing.
That's fantastic. That's really good to hear, because one of the things that we see around the world is that countries that do well continue to invest, especially in infrastructure during COVID. Countries that don't make that decision to keep moving forward, their economies tend to slow down. So it looks like from all I can see that you're doing very, very well. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? You have, from my point of view, you have a really, really interesting background with a tremendous knowledge and experience in technology. And we see technology driving everything about infrastructure, decision-making, building, financing, and long-term performance going forward. So having your background in that position has got to be incredibly valuable. Can you just speak a little bit about your background?
Well, I think my educational background is actually, electronics engineering, specializing in satellite communications. So initially, I spent some time with some Japanese government funded for satellite communication in the early 90s. And then I joined one of the Indonesia's largest telco company called Indosat. In mid-90s, Indosat invested in a company in the US, because at that time, the US is just starting this liberalization of the sector with 1996, what do you call it, New Communication Act. So we invest in a company in the US. So I lived for a while in the Midwest, actually, in Iowa.
Which city?
It's a city called Fairfield. It's a very small city. I think, I don't know if you know Iowa, but it's about 2 hours drive from Cedar Rapids or Iowa City.
That's great.
So it's in the middle of nowhere. But interestingly, with infrastructure, because you have all this infrastructure, electricity, broadband. Even at the time, we can run the, we have facilities both in Iowa and in Boulder, Colorado, in Omaha, and also in other places like in Europe and in Hong Kong. Everything can be run from this remote and small place in the middle of nowhere in the cornfield in Iowa. So I think that's the lesson learned. Then I was back in Indonesia in late 90s. At that time, we are experiencing the, what do you call it, interesting development in cellular infrastructure. So Indonesia until late 1990s only have 3% of telephone penetration. So it's about 8 million connecting telephone for 200 something million of populations. But between 2000 and 2010, we managed to have 100% coverage of populations by cellular. And I think interestingly, it was done not by government funding, but it's done by the private sector. The Singapore Telecom company, Telkomsel, and then Indosat, and also XL Comindo. So 5 companies managed to do this infrastructure development and almost covering the entire populations of Indonesia within 10 years, which is I think is very important. So I think that's the first lesson learned. By late 2010,
I was going to say that that's really interesting, because you put together, what I see is 2 critical trends for the future: the technology, which is incredible in terms of its ability to drive performance, and then of course increased private investment, which is really dynamic in terms of finding good opportunities in infrastructure. And then you have a kind of a discipline focus, so clean water, hospitals, et cetera. Phenomenal. So anyway, sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the benefit, the company that I work for is actually listed in the US. It's listed in New York Stock Exchange. So we have access to a worldwide investor and capital. So we have either the equity financing and also the bond financing. So we issued very 144A Regulation S a bond over the years, which actually fund this exciting development. I think that's one important lesson, how we can benefit from access to capital for the infrastructure development.
That's very good. So my last question is, in terms of Indonesia's current infrastructure, if you had a magic wand, right? Because the world is changing so much, you can almost argue that everybody has a magic wand. But what's the one thing that you would change, or the one thing that you would ask for, so that you can move faster, get more things done in terms of Indonesia's infrastructure priorities?
Well, I would like to see more alignment between the central government and the subnational government. I think this is still one of the biggest challenge. that different part of the government, different part of the country still have different priorities, different main agenda. I think it will be, very, very, very good, very exciting to have all this alignment done and happen. That will really help the infrastructure development.
I really like what you said there, because that's a big problem that we have in the U.S. is you're very familiar. We have a federal government, but we have 50 states. And unless everybody gets organized, we have problems. And now, of course, I'm just right across from the White House. We're trying to figure out who the next president's going to be, who's going to be in charge of the Senate, who's going to be in charge of the House of Representatives. Well, I guess we know that, but the other two we're unsure of. So the alignment issue is a really interesting issue. I want to thank you, Wahid, and I want to congratulate you as well on your staff, because you really have a phenomenal team and you guys are getting amazing things done. I had a chance to visit your offices, and your staff is incredible. They've been very generous to us, but we know that they, for foreign investors that work in Indonesia, they're in good hands when they're working with you. So thank you very much. This is really kind of you to take the time.
My pleasure. Thank you for your attention and interest to the Indonesian development. Looking forward to working with you and your team.
Good. Well, thank you so much. Have a good evening. I know it's late on Friday for you, so we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.